This video is sponsored by Stack Audio, manufacturers of the Orva speaker and equipment isolation feet used by a British audiophile. For more information about these and other products, please click the link in the description. I try to be selective about the products I choose for review, but there's some companies where I'm tempted to review every product they produce. Atoll is one of those companies. They just seem to offer very good value for money. The Atoll IN200 Signature retailed for £899 when I reviewed it back in 2021. Despite many manufacturers introducing steep price hikes since then, you can get that amplifier for £1,000 today, and it's still built in France. The Atoll IN300, reviewed in 2023, shares the warm big sound character but delivers more power, greater bass control and more detail retrieval. The amp retails today for £2,750 and has a massive dual mono power supply. It's capable of producing 150 watts of clean power into each channel, driving an 8 ohm load. I've also reviewed the IN200 Signature, but there's a bit of a story to tell about that one. I'll save that till later. Atoll have recently revised the 200, 300 and 400 models, all now come with the Evolution suffix, so I thought this was a good opportunity to find out what the IN400 Evolution has to offer. The IN400 Evolution retails for £5,500 in the UK. It's available with the front panel anodized in black or silver. The amplifier can be specified with an optional moving magnet phonostage board for £100 or a moving core one for £150. The optional DAC board can be selected for £350. They all seem very sensibly priced to me. The outgoing IN400 had curved heat sinks forming the side panels and the front panel sculptured accordingly. The unconventional looks very much divided opinion. I personally found them a little eccentric too. I prefer the more conventional casework of the Evolution model. It remains a hefty amplifier measuring 440 by 130 by 370 millimeters and weighing 19.5 kilograms. Imperial measurements are 17.3 by 5.1 by 14.6 inches and 43 pounds. A short press of the left rotary dial will take the unit out of standby, whilst rotating it facilitates input selection. Just below it on the right is a 6.35mm quarter-inch headphone jack. The right dial will not only adjust the volume but allow access to the menus. There's a left-right channel balance adjustment, a rather tacky backlight for the dials, selection between blue, red and cyan. Thankfully you can leave it off, and the display can also be switched off. The amplifier can be set to go into standby after set intervals or not at all. Comprehensive multi-purpose remote control is also provided. On the rear are a bank of single-ended RCAs for 4 line-level inputs, a tape loop to connect recording devices, and a bypass fixed-level input if you want to use just the power amplifier section. There are 2 sets of pre-outs to connect to external power amplifiers or powered subwoofers. Below are 2 sets of balanced XLR inputs. All the connectors are of very good quality. Even the speaker terminals are heavy duty. They'll easily accommodate those audiophile cables that look like they're thick enough to pass water, let alone electricity. The IN400 Evolution is a little different in architecture to the IN200 Signature and the IN300 that I reviewed. They both had 2 power transformers, keeping the left and right channels completely separated. The IN400 Evo has just one. I don't know why they've done that other than to save space. It is massive though, rated at 1050 VA according to Atoll, whereas the IN300 that I reviewed had a total of 880 VA. The IN400 Evo has 12 power supply filter capacitors, each rated at 6,800 microfarads, just like the IN300, but Atoll claim a total of 96,680 microfarads of capacitance. So I'm not sure where the additional 15,000 microfarads or so of capacitance is located. Perhaps it's under this shielding. There's another one on the other side. The 400 Evo has 8 MOSFET output devices per side, as opposed to the 6 found in the IN300. Power has increased marginally from 150 watts to 160 watts per channel into an 8 ohm load, but peak current delivery should be significantly higher. Mounted to those tiny heat sinks are bipolar junction transistors driving the output stage. Atoll circuit boards have always been nicely laid out with good quality discrete through-hole components, as opposed to those tiny surface mount components or relying on ICs. Through-hole components just handle power better. Let me show you the other power amplifier module, which is the same. The Evolution series has revised circuits where the current polarization stages have been improved to reduce intermodulation distortion and ensure more stable biasing conditions. The input stages here, the switching relays for the XLR inputs are on the main board, whereas the relays for the left and right RCA inputs are mounted on the boards above. To the right you can see the ports to receive the optional phono stage and DAC boards. As I've come to expect from Atoll, the overall architecture and quality of this unit is well above what you normally get at this price. Before I get into the IN400 Evolution, let me briefly tell you what was up with the IN200 Signature amplifier that I reviewed back in 2021. It was the first amplifier from Atoll that I had in for review. The amp arrived pretty beaten up. Scratches on the casework, one of the feet were missing, and the volume control came off in my hand. I reported it to the then UK distributor, it's a different distributor now, and he said that these are demo units, they go around dealers and they can have a pretty rough life. Can you photograph around it? I said, yeah, fine. Anyway, the IN200 Signature had a more forward and aggressive sound than the IN80 Signature and the IN300 that I reviewed later. It's always niggled me that there was something wrong with that IN200 unit. So a couple of months ago, this is before the Evo update, I asked the new UK distributor to send me another IN200 Signature that had been checked to be in good working order. Okay, so I can now confirm that the IN200 Signature, the newer one, shares the same house sound as the 80 and the 300 I reviewed, which is a warm tone, big soundstage, all delivered with very good detail. Where does that leave me? Well, it leaves me with an accurate review of the IN200 Signature. As far as the tonality is concerned, the rest of it's okay. I have considered deleting it, but there's more than my review up there now with over 600 people sharing their comments and experiences, so I don't think that is the right thing to do. I pinned a comment updating my findings so that it'll be the first comment they read, and also shared my findings in this video. Now that that's out of the way, let's get back to the review. I know quite a few people who love the sound of the IN300 that I reviewed in 2023 for its big, rich presentation, but it loses out in terms of control and resolution to my reference amplifier at circa £3,000. Not dramatically, but significantly enough for me to want to pull it back from outstanding to highly recommended. The Hegel H190 has tighter bass, crisper mid-range transients and a more open top end. The differences are enough for the Norwegian amplifier to remain my benchmark at this price. For now, at least, the IN400 Evo sounds a lot cleaner than the IN300. Instrument separation is excellent and it's all presented in a vast soundstage in terms of width as well as in terms of depth. It comfortably outshines my H190 as well. We're talking about a different level of performance here. All three amplifiers have a similar wattage rating, but I suspect the IN400 Evo can deliver significantly more current thanks to a massive power supply and 16 output devices as opposed to 12 on the IN300 and only 8 on the H190. But I suspect that the new Evolution circuit that cleans up distortion has a lot to do with it as well. It makes me wonder how good the new IN200 and 300 Evolution models are that have had the same modified circuit boards. I may have to get one of those in to find out, but I'll only review it if there's a significant improvement. The overall tonality of the IN400 Evo still sits on the warm side of neutral, but it's not as obviously coloured as the IN300, although the leading edges of notes remain softened slightly, as does a touch of bloom to the bass. The IN300 sounds a bit soft, this one doesn't. Edges of notes are rounded off just enough to give an organic kind of presentation. I also thought the IN300 sounded a little bit dark with the top 2 octaves, not as expressive as I'd ideally like. The IN400 Evo in comparison is a lot more open in the highs and they are superbly refined. It's cleaner sounding than the outgoing Hegel H390, which I had in purely for comparison purposes with the new H400. The H400 won my Best Amplifier of 2024 award in the above £3,000 category. I haven't heard an integrated amplifier with the precision and control of the H400, the grip in the bass, and the neat way in which performers are laid out. But in terms of overall resolution, there isn't much to choose between the IN400 Evo and the H400. They're both very resolving amplifiers. It's too close to call without having both of them here at the same time. The main difference is in presentation. I'm fortunate to have a bunch of great quality high-res vinyl rips of AC/DC albums. With energetic tracks like Livewire, my preference would be for the Hegel H400 for its superior ability to cling to bass lines and handle guitar riffs thrown out by Angus Young on his Gibson SG Standard. All my jazz collection is a lot more laid back than that. Here my allegiance would shift to the Atoll IN400 Evolution for its more natural harmonic presentation, as evidenced when playing Blues for Dell. The tone of Kenny Burrell's guitar and Jimmy Smith's organ was superb. The IN400 Evo isn't quite as rich and textured in the mid-range as the £6,670 Sugden Masterclass IA4 what is, but it has better bass control, a more articulate top end, and will drive more difficult speakers. My vintage Exposure 21 Pre and 18 Super monoblocks are a little less warm sounding than this Atoll amp. The background is a shade darker and they're more agile with transients and bass lines. There's going to be some benefit to having pre, left and right channels in separate boxes when you get to these kind of price points, but the IN400 Evo matches my vintage Exposures in the size of the soundscape and makes dynamic shifts between quiet and loud passages greater. Most importantly, it's very close to my pre-monoblocks when it comes to unearthing micro detail and reproducing it with natural timbre, and that isn't something that I've heard from an integrated amplifier before. There's not a huge amount to report here because my unit didn't come with any of the optional boards, not that I'd be evaluating the phono stages anyway. I'll leave that for others. The DAC board I've actually heard in the IN200 and 300 model, and it performs very well. I do think as you go further up the range, people are less likely to go for the optional boards. They're more likely to rely upon external DACs and phono stages to squeeze maximum performance from their amplifier. But the boards would be a good place to start if you haven't got external ones. Atoll should be applauded for offering the DAC and phono stage boards as options and charging such reasonable prices for them. Fitting them as standard would unnecessarily put the price up for many users. As for speaker bearings, the IN400 Evo worked great with all the speakers I tried. The £1,500 Amphion Argon ones aren't likely to be paired with amplifiers that retail for over £5,000, but there was excellent synergy between these two brands. The Atoll amplifier was able to eradicate any hint of dryness or leanness that the Amphion Argon ones can sometimes exhibit, and it drove them superbly well. It bodes well for people considering this amplifier with Amphion speakers further up the range. My vintage Proac Response 1 SCs were also driven admirably for people who like a slightly warm and very resolving sound. The IN400 Evo had no trouble keeping control of these rather demanding stand mount speakers. The £1,800 Quad Revela ones have also proven to embarrass amplifiers with power supplies that aren't up to snuff. Unsurprisingly, this Atoll powerhouse had no issues. The quads are a bit more forward in the mid-range than my Proacs and timbrally slightly less insightful, but with tighter bass and more expressive highs. The IN400 Evo injected some welcome warmth, but still allowed the fundamental character of the Quad Revela ones to shine through. The £5,000 Alta Audio Alyssas are more laid back than the quads, closer in tone to my Proacs, but with even deeper, cleaner bass, more open mids and greater resolution in the highs. For the size of the speakers, the Alyssas play ridiculously low thanks to a transmission line bass loading. They're also extremely revealing, so some bloom to the bass and softening of mid-range transients was apparent, but so was the richness of tone, scale, dynamics and excellent resolution of the IN400 Evolution. Another successful pairing. The Atoll IN400 Evolution is a well-constructed amplifier that isn't going to draw too much attention to itself at first glance. It's more understated than its predecessor thanks to a more conventional chassis, which I appreciate. It's under the skin where the real value lies. Atoll offer you a large transformer, more filter capacitance, a greater number of output devices to deliver substantial current than is the norm at this price. I suspect it's the changes made to the circuit to lower distortion, which is the reason why the IN400 Evo sounds a lot cleaner than the IN300. It's one of the finest sounding amplifiers I've heard below £10,000. It has a distinctly warm tone, but it's not soft, and it certainly doesn't come at the expense of resolution. It's all delivered in a massive soundstage and the ability to drive pretty much any speaker on the market, and that's why the Atoll IN400 Evolution gets an outstanding from this channel. I think that this integrated amplifier will see off the vast majority of separate pre-power amplifiers in its market segment. It's amazing how good integrated amplifiers have got, and that's despite the fact that there's power amplifiers out there these days for a couple of £100. Heck, you can even get monoblocks at that price. It makes no sense to me to separate things out to that extent at that price point, but maybe it's just me. And that got me thinking, I'd like to know where you sit on the integrated versus the separate pre-power monoblock debate. Please let me know about your thoughts and experiences in the comments section. I'm sure you know what to do by now. If you want to support me here and what I do, like, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification. Check me out on Patreon. There's a couple of tiers you can access there if you think I can help you on your audiophile journey. Also check out the ABA Club on Patreon, which has some great ways to interact with me and fellow Patreons. But for today, for now, British Audiophile, signing off.